40 right now, and it is time to visit with our good friend Rekha from the Des Moines Register, like we do every week at this time. Hi, Rekha.
Good morning, Lou. How are you?
Good. You look fairly dry for the weather that we're experiencing now.
Oh man, it's wicked out there, though. I brought my umbrella for a change. Last time I didn't, and that was a problem. But I rode here on my inflatable Firestone tires.
See that?
And,
Smooth ride.
I was very appreciative for
See
that, at least. Smooth ride.
Yeah, because it would have been like this if we wouldn't have done that.
I know.
How about that?
I know.
So what do we have to dive into this morning?
So I decided today to take a break from bellyaching about our country's problems and instead bellyache about another country's problems, the Congo. So there is a program at the U.S. State Department, and it's actually a program that I really appreciate and I'm thankful for, where every year they bring about 12 or 13 women from around the world in and honor them as International Women of Courage. And these are women who have been in the vanguard of protest against some societal evil, either towards women or towards human rights or whatever. And I've had and then the Iowa International Center brings one of those women over here after the ceremony for a couple of days of touring around and meeting with Iowans and engaging with ordinary people and sharing stories about their country and their protest work or whatever the work is. So this year, I got a chance to meet one of the honorees who came out here. Her name is Rebecca Kabugo, and she's from the Congo, which got its independence from Belgium in 1960. She was dubbed the world's youngest prisoner of conscience when she was in prison last year at the age of 22, because she had been arrested for protesting, get this, democratic elections in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Protesting for democratic elections, rather, because the president was not wanting to give up power after 2 terms, as the Constitution would require him to do. So she and 5 other friends, all of them male and all of them older than her, were planning a big, peaceful civil disobedience act of protest to say, you know, give it up, your term is up. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, they were having a planning meeting, and security forces swooped in and arrested them. And they were convicted of civil disobedience, which should not be a crime in a democratic republic, but was. And they drew sentences of 2 years each, which were appealed down to 6 months. And she spent 6 months in prison. And it was pretty Spartan conditions. They don't serve any food in the prison except for twice a week, 1 cup of corn and beans each per inmate, unless you are lucky enough to have family on the outside that brings you food, and she did. She's a university student. She's studying psychology, by the way. She's really intelligent, educated, you know, comes from a middle-class family. And she was in there with women who were hardcore inmates for violent crimes like murder and
hardcore criminals.
Hardcore criminals. And she became their target too, because, you know, she's this tiny little 22-year-old, but incredibly feisty. And she got out, and no sooner did she get out than she started protesting again, went right back to it and was arrested again and spent another week in jail. And, you know, unfortunately, the president is still in power. He was supposed to have given up power December 19th of last year, but he's still sitting in office. But she says the protests are growing and they're widespread, and it's a lot of them are led by university students who have had an education and have come to understand the dynamics of, you know, political power and how it works. That she says the biggest problem in her country and her area is there's a complete lack of infrastructure. So there are no roads, there's no water, there's no electricity in her city, and she lives in the city, and there's no water, so people have to get up and go walking 5 miles to bring water.
This day and age.
In this day and age, and yet these leaders are sitting on all kinds of money, and she says, you know, they send their kids to foreign schools, and they put their money in foreign banks, and they're siphoning away money that they're supposed to be spending on infrastructure needs for the people on their own personal wealth. And that's why they don't want to give up power, because then they might be investigated for that and they wouldn't have those perks anymore. Right. But it's extraordinary talking to this 23-year-old, now 23, about these things. She has such a sharp sense of awareness and sense of self. And she was last Wednesday in Washington, D.C. at the State Department being given an award by Melania Trump, as you can see here in this picture. Can we close up on that?
Now, did you pick this picture with her not smiling for a reason, or is she smiling and it's just hard?
I mean, I couldn't make her smile during the during the meeting.
She's not a big
Melania
smiler.
Trump.
Got it.
No, actually, I took some pictures of her when she was here, where she was smiling brightly.
Oh, okay.
It is possible that she was feeling intimidated by the crowds, or maybe she was not so happy with the Trump family. I'm not sure, but anyway, she was there last Wednesday getting this award, and then she came here, and she was at Creative Visions, where I met her on Monday.
Sure.
And just a remarkable
So what is this
young woman.
award that she acquired? What does that do for her?
So, I mean, that's the interesting thing. I said to her, so now, and she was recognized, and the speeches said that she was a leader, and I said, so you're a leader in your country? She said, absolutely not. You think she's very outspoken. She says, you think I'm going to go home and say to everybody, okay, now I'm a leader because I won this award from the U.S. Department of State, and they're all going to say, oh, guide us, tell us what to do. She said, no, absolutely not. Our movement is very, broad-based, and everybody brings a skill to it, and there's no leadership. We try to develop democratic principles where everybody is equally seen as a leader. But what it does is it raises her profile, and it raises the profile of the struggle that she's engaged in for democratic rights in her country. It also, unfortunately, puts her at a little bit of risk, because she was saying that, they hadn't known she was getting this award, the administration back in Congo. Now they will have heard about it, and when she goes back, she could be in danger. She says, I said, well, are they going to do something to you? She said, well, I can't read what's in their minds. She said, I'll just have to be a little careful.
Would she be in danger because she received this award and went and
it is
acquired the
absolutely possible
award?
because,
or would she be better off because she has this award, because now everybody's paying attention to
well, that's
her?
a very good question, actually. It could go either way, because a number of protesters have been killed, have disappeared, quote unquote, have been found bloodied and massacred. Just last week, as a matter of fact, 2 United Nations observers who had gone there internationally, one American and one Swedish, their bodies were found. They had disappeared for just looking into, the corruption and what was going on there. So it's a really bad situation, but it takes so much courage for young people like this to come forward. And another really sweet thing, she's studying psychology, which doesn't have much to do with anything. And I said, what is your goal? And she said, I want to be a psychologist to the military. And I said, that's interesting, because the military are the ones that came and plucked you out of this, room in the middle of the night, and, aren't they sort of seen as the enemy? And she said, well, they are also victims in their own way, because they do what the president tells them to do, and they don't have any power. And she said they've seen so much bloodshed, and so have their wives and children, and there's no kind of support for them. There's no PTSD training. Isn't that amazing to have that kind of a perspective at that age?
Obviously an incredible
role model.
Is she back there now, or
she's
still
here
around?
today.
She's
She's
still
here. Yeah,
okay.
but she's leaving tomorrow. And while she was here, it's so kind of ironic the way things work. She came in on Saturday, and they took her on Sunday to this protest at the state capitol, the Freedom to Worship, or the Freedom of Religion rally, which was in opposition to our president's ban on Muslims. So there's this paradox that she is in Washington being given this award for her courage protesting for freedoms by Melania Trump, and then here she is showing up at this protest where Donald Trump is being protested for his lack of democracy. It's a very funny world and a small world, and I guess the message of the column that I wrote today is, even democratic so-called countries can behave in undemocratic ways, and it's incumbent upon all of us as civilians to raise our voices and do what we can peacefully to correct that.
How were we lucky enough to get her here?
Because the Iowa International Center has had, so they farm out to each one of the 12 or 13 honorees has been farming out to different communities around the country for people-to-people kind of interactions. And the International Center raised its hand. This has been going on since 2007, this program, and said, we'll take care of it. So they pay her expenses, they bring her here, they house her, and they arrange meetings with different organizations that they think might be of interest. So she met with some religious groups here. And she's Protestant herself, and she met with some church groups, and she went to the state capitol. She was introduced by AKO, Representative AKO Abdul Samad. And so, I mean, she had a real whirlwind experience.
What did she think of Des Moines and Iowa in general?
Well, I didn't get to see, I only saw her at the beginning of her trip, so I haven't had a chance to really talk to her about all of that. But it's interesting. I asked her if she had, and her colleagues had, drawn inspiration from American movements for civil rights, and she said they really didn't know anything about them.
Really?
Yeah, and that part of the reason is they don't have, they're so
don't
not
have anything.
connected. They don't
Right.
have internet, they don't have social media. So unlike in the Arab Spring, where, you know, young Arab students were drawing great inspiration,
Right.
hearing on Twitter about our movements,
Right.
they don't know anything
That's a
about
totally
them.
different world, then,
Isn't it? Exactly. So it's a very indigenous movement. I mean, it's homespun, homegrown, and
Oh,
yet
my goodness.
really effective.
Unbelievable. Well, you can learn more and read more in today's Des Moines Register, page 13A with Rekha Basu.
Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Good to see you.
Great to see you.
See you next week.
Stay
It is
dry.
8:51 right